Recording.
Morning.
Morning,
Morning,
Professor.
Professor.
Morning. Okay, I will begin now. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all. My name is Dr. Razman, and I'll be your master of ceremony for today's event. Welcome to the 5th PBS MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance, an event conducted in collaboration between Putra Business School and the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, or MAICSA. A little bit of background on this colloquium. The colloquium was first held on the 27th December 2020 via an online platform, and since then we have had the event every year without fail, even during the pandemic, all through the online platform, including this edition. Before we begin the event properly, let me share with you the objectives of this colloquium. This colloquium is the platform where our MBA in Corporate Governance students will present their research findings from their MBA project papers, which focus on the latest corporate governance issues. There will be 4 research findings to be presented today. Selected students were invited to present their findings in this colloquium, as we choose only project paper that receive very good grades. This edition is also a little bit special, as all our 4 presenters are government servants who studied in Putra Business School under the government scholarship. We will also have 2 esteemed MAICSA members to be our panelists, which I'm going to introduce later, where they will listen to their presentation and share their comments and insights on the issues presented. Don't worry, presenters, this is not a Viva session. This is just merely a sharing session, since all of these presenters, they have graduated and attended the PBS convocation late last year. So you're not going to take back your certificate if you don't present well. This is just a sharing session. And for today's colloquium, we have invited MAICSA members, PBS staff, PBS student, as well as member of the public to participate. It's open to all. We are pleased to have today yang berbahagia Datuk Akbar Moiduni, MAICSA Deputy President and Group Chairman and Managing Director of MINC Corporate Consultants, to give his keynote speech for this colloquium. But before that, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Azmawani Abdul Rahman, PBS CEO and President, to give her welcoming speech. Prof, all to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Razman. Assalamualaikum and good morning. My special thanks to Datuk Akbar Moiduni, MAICSA Deputy President, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Razman Abdul Latif, Director of Coursework Program, Putra Business School, MAICSA members, fellow students and participants of 5th PBS MAICSA Colloquium on Corporate Governance. Good morning and welcome to the 5th PBS MAICSA Colloquium. As the host of this annual colloquium, as mentioned by Dr. Razman just now. It started a few years back. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome all of you. I would like to first address the PBS collaboration with MAICSA. It has gone a long way since October 2011, when Putra Business School, the then Graduate School of Management UPM, first offering its MBA Corporate Governance. We have produced many graduates under this program, and expecting more students undergoing this program. As the CEO of Putra Business School and former Director of Corporate Strategy and Communications at University Putra Malaysia, I clearly understand the importance of good governance. It is a cornerstone for many main functions in the organization, such as on like risk management, and most importantly on compliance. Yeah. Through deep understanding and following the rules, principle, and setting up policies, institution can regulate their process better. I am also in strategic operations management field as a researcher myself. So this can be considered as very, very fundamental for organization in achieving its vision, mission, and strategic goals, of course, in line with their corporate values. Yeah. So therefore, moving forward, I want to see more students in this program due to the importance of good governance in managing effective and high-performing organization. So ladies and gentlemen, in this important colloquium, our panel speaker will be sharing their thought and insight, which I am sure will be very enlightening and useful to you. I am sure, and I wish that all of you will have a fruitful session, and I am sure this colloquium will achieve the objective as mentioned by Dr. Razman just now. I hope you will have a productive session. Last but not least, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for choosing to spend your Saturday morning to attend, to listen to this colloquium and our speakers. And to the organizing team, thank you for your effort, the effort that you have put to make this event a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Azmawani, for the welcoming speech. Before I invite Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Akbar Moiduni, to give his keynote speech, I would like to give a little bit of introduction on him. Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Akbar Moiduni is a deputy president of MAICSA and was appointed to the position in July 2022. Dato' Akbar is a member of the council, having been re-elected in 2018, 2020, and 2022. And he was co-opted to council since January 2000 and elected to council in December 2001. He was also the president of MAICSA from 2007 to 2009 and has served as deputy president, vice president, and honorary secretary. He is currently chairman of the Conference Organizing Committee, Membership Committee, Constitution Task Force, National Investigation Group, and also deputy chairman of the Technical Compliance and Governance Committee. Dato' Akbar is also chairman of the MAICSA Bar Council Joint Working Group Committee, and also one of the institute representative on the Corporate Practice Consultative Forum, the CPCF Technical Committee, and the Technical Focus Group set up by the Companies Commission of Malaysia, and also the institute representative on the Company Secretaries Consultative Group. He obtained his ICSA, now known as the Chartered Governance Institute Professional Qualification, from London, United Kingdom in 1986, and therefore he has already has a valid practicing license for the past 37 years. Dato' Akbar also is the group chairman and CEO of the MINC Group of Companies Malaysia since 1986, which provides corporate secretarial and governance consultancy services to more than 1,000 companies. His professional experience spans a period of more than 37 years and has been involved in all facets of secretarial assignments, including consultancy, restructuring, and due diligence for both multinational and local corporations. His clients comprise of private and public companies, and he is involved in regular speaking arrangement at forums on corporate legislation and act as mediator on corporate disputes. Dato' Akbar also is a member of the Malaysian Institute of Management, MIM, and a member of the Disciplinary Board of the Bar Council Malaysia. Now, without much further ado, I would like to invite Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Akbar Moiduni, MAICSA Deputy President, to give his keynote speech.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dr. Marasman. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, I want to wish all those Muslims here Selamat Hari Raya. All right, I'm so glad that you're able to make time today on a Saturday to be with us for this colloquium. Yang Berbahagia Professor Prof. Dr. Asmawani Abdul Rahman, President and CEO of Putra Business School, PBS Director of Non-Thesis Based Program, Associate Prof. Dr. Ahmad Razman Abdul Latif, Program Coordinator of MBA in Corporate Governance, and MAICSA panelists, Associate Prof. Norbijan Abu Bakar and Ms. Leong Oiwa, colloquium presenters, and all Putra Business School staff members, distinguished guests, panelists, and participants. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And I'm delighted to acknowledge the presence of all participants here today. Congratulations to the organizers from both Putra Business School and MAICSA for a job well done. I'm also extremely pleased that both Putra Business School and MAICSA had successfully organized 4 MAICSA postgraduate research colloquiums in the past. Shabas and well done. On behalf of the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, MAICSA, and Putra Business School, PBS, I extend a warm welcome to all guests, panelists, students, and participants attending the 5th PBS MAICSA Postgraduate Research Colloquium 2023. I would also like to express gratitude to Putra Business School for inviting MAICSA to officiate the colloquium and deliver the keynote address today. Distinguished guests and participants, the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, MAICSA, was established in 1959 as an affiliate body of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, ICSA, UK, now known as the Chartered Governance Institute, the CGI, UK. In May 2018, the Institute underwent a name change from ICSA to CGI as part of a strategic reform to address evolving trends in governance and compliance. Recognizing the increasing number of individuals assuming governance responsibilities in highly regulated and risk-conscious environments, the Institute aimed to leverage the global focus on governance. Consequently, it repositioned itself to take a leading role in governance and introduced the new designation of Chartered Governance Professionals as part of its strategy. The qualifying program was expanded to encompass more comprehensive coverage of risk management, strategy, and international governance practices. This allowed members to qualify for a broader range of governance roles and present themselves as members of both Chartered Secretaries and Chartered Governance Professionals. Governance professionals play a crucial role in leading and providing guidance on best practices in governance, risk management, and compliance. They champion the compliance framework to safeguard organizational integrity, promote ethical and corporate behavior standards, and balance the interests of board, management, and stakeholders. In essence, they act as a bridge between senior management and the board, entrusted with highly confidential information and tasked with making discrete decisions making them the most trusted individuals within an organization. Thus, governance professionals plays a pivotal role in helping boards achieve the organization's vision and strategy. They have a significant impact on the level and quality of corporate governance and governance culture within an organization. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chartered Governance Institute is a truly global organization, providing a universally recognized qualification in corporate governance. Membership is connected to a global governance organization that advocates at the international level and provides support through its global presence and network of local institutes in 9 countries, including Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Hong Kong, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and the United Kingdom and Ireland. MAICSA, the Malaysian division, is committed to producing highly qualified members through its globally focused qualifying program. Members are awarded dual designations, Chartered Secretary, CS, and Chartered Governance Professional, CGP, allowing them to serve in various governance roles. The Institute also offers a suitable training and professional development programs to ensure members remain relevant and competent. Currently, MAICSA has over 6,000 members, students, and affiliates on its register. To foster vibrancy and sustainable growth, MAICSA has consistently expanded its network of universities to offer the qualifying program to degree holders and a specifically designed master's program in corporate governance for adult learners through collaborative agreements. Presently, 5 universities have collaborated with MAICSA under an agreement to offer this program. In 2011, Putra Business School became the first private university to collaborate with MAICSA. Together, they developed a Master in Corporate Governance program specifically tailored for adult learners who had completed their degree in various fields of study and aspired to pursue a career in the realm of corporate governance. The university has thus far produced 137 graduates from the Masters in CG program who have been admitted as graduates of MAICSA and subsequently elevated their status to become associate and fellow members of the Institute. This ongoing collaboration between PBS and MAICSA holds great potential for making substantial contributions to local content and enhancing the participation of trained governance professionals in the corporate landscape, both at the national and international levels. Ladies and gentlemen, our strategic partners in the corporate sector, many of whom are listed corporations on Bursa Malaysia, consistently emphasize that MAICSA members are their preferred choice for employment in their corporate secretarial and legal departments. I'm proud to announce that MAICSA has a 0% of unemployment rate among its graduates, a remarkable achievement sustained over the past several years. I believe this trend will continue as our members are highly esteemed for their abilities to assume governance roles effectively and professionally. At this very moment, we have a queue of employers eagerly awaiting the opportunity to employ our future graduates. I'm also proud to mention that many company secretaries serving public listed companies are MAICSA members. Hence, I urge more students to seize this valuable opportunity to obtain dual awards, a master's degree from the university and an internationally recognized professional qualification from MAICSA. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, well, the COVID-19 pandemic struck at a very crucial moment when the importance of corporate governance was particularly pronounced. This crisis served as a catalyst, accelerating the incorporation of environmental, social, and governance (ESG) factors into decision-making processes. It understood the role of businesses in addressing broader societal issues and emphasized the need for robust corporate governance. In response, leading companies were compelled to address economic, environmental, and social issues in ways that generate value. Regulators establish expectation for companies to adopt enhanced environmental, social, and governance practices. The Malaysian government implemented legal reforms encompassing internal controls, corporate governance, corporate responsibility, flexibility in managing company affairs, compliance requirements and procedures, as well as reduce costs associated with business establishment. All these reforms are essential components of good governance. Consequently, there's a heightened demand for qualified governance professionals who can ensure proper compliance and adherence to sound governance practices. These professionals play a vital role in navigating the complex landscape of regulations and upholding good governance principles within organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, from the above mentioned points, I trust that you now have a better understanding of who governance professionals are and why their role is vital in an organization. Currently, there's a significant shortage of such professionals. And believe me, there is a serious shortage. The income opportunities are highly attractive, and the likelihood of being part of top management is substantial. Furthermore, by attending the research presentations of our Master in Collaborative Governance students, you will witness how effectively our young governance professionals apply the knowledge and wisdom to analyze cases and offer remarkable solutions in the realm of good governance. In conclusion, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, I express my gratitude to all of you for your presence and support at this event. With that, I officially declare the PBS MAICSA Postgraduate Research Colloquium 2023 open. Wishing all the best. Thank you, and may you have an engaging and fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia, Dato' Akbar Moidini, for wonderful speech and for opening the colloquium. We are now ready to begin our colloquium, but before we start with the student presentation or graduate presentation, I'm sure they can't wait to present their findings. But of course, it's customary now to have all group photo to be taken. So if I can request all participants to switch on their camera so that we can take the group photo. I can see 3 pages here, so I need to take 3 times. So please switch on your camera just for a while. Okay, so that we can take a group photo and share it later in our Facebook post. Okay, so if you are all ready, let me take the first page. 1, 2, smile. Okay, going to this here. Okay, now I'm going to take the second page. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, now the third page. 1, 2, 3, smile.
In progress.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Thank you for your cooperation for switching on the camera for us to take the group photo. Okay, now we can start our colloquium. Just like the previous edition, we are honored to have two panelists from MAICSA. And please allow me to introduce them first. Our first panel member for today is Associate Professor Norbijan Abu Bakar. Associate Professor Norbijan Abu Bakar is an associate member of the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators since 2006. She is currently a member of MAICSA Education Committee and the chairman of Assessment Review Panel, ARP. She holds a Master in Professional Accounting from St. Louis University, USA, Bachelor in Accounting from Southern Illinois University, USA, and she obtained her ICSA Professional Qualification in 2000. Her professional experience spans a period of more than 20 years in professional and scholarly activities. She has produced more than 15 research papers and published more than 10 publications. She was an active member of the Examination Committee of MIA, actively involved in the Accounting Research Institute, UITM, and many other professional academic activities. And her research interests include reporting for non-profit organizations, corporate governance, and financial reporting. And our second panel member is Ms. Leong Oiwa, who is a fellow member of the Malaysian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators, MAICSA, and has more than 30 years of experience in handling corporate secretarial matters in the profession and the corporate sector. She has been involved in advising on corporate secretarial requirements, including corporate restructuring and compliance with various regulatory bodies such as the Registrar of Companies, Bursa Malaysia Security Berhad, Security Commission, and other authorities. She is currently the Director Corporate Development of Epsilon Advisory Services Sdn Bhd, which specializes in providing the full range of corporate secretarial and advisory services. She's also a regular trainer of MAICSA's continuing professional education program. Okay, so let me brief everybody on the format of the presentation. We will have 4 presenters today. And each presenter will present his or her research finding for maximum 20 minutes without interruption. This is maximum, but if you want to present for 10 minutes also can, followed by 15 minutes of insight sharing by the panelists. So we call it insights because the panel not necessarily have to ask questions. They can relate the research findings with what's actually happening in the industry, what is the current ongoing best practices related to the subject being presented, because this is the opportunity for the audience, the presenter, to get to know the latest happening on the corporate governance issue. But however, we want to make sure this time limit will be strictly followed. I will give an indication when there are 5 minutes left for presentation or 2 minutes left for the session to end, because we want to allow a fair representation for each presenter. If the audience wanted to ask a question to the presenter or share anything, please write the name of the presenter that you want to ask and the question inside the chat box, which is available at the bottom. Okay, so you do not need to use your mic. You just type the answer, the question in the chat box, and the presenter will be able to answer your question throughout the colloquium. Okay, meaning once the first presenter already finished his session, then you can ask the question throughout the session. if he is around, because our first presenter currently at Terengganu after performing Korban, and he has to go back to KL, but hopefully he will stay a little bit back after his presentation to answer some of the questions from the audience. And then once the second presenter finished her presentation, then she will be able to answer questions from audience in the chat box. Okay. And that's how we're going to conduct it. And hopefully we'll be able to finish everything before 12. So let's begin with the first presentation. I will introduce our first presenter. Our first presenter is Mr. Saiful Islam bin Wan Zahidi. And born in Ipoh, 1977, currently staying in Bandar Baru Bangi. He graduated in Bachelor of Law from the International Islamic University Malaysia in 2001 and already finished MBA in Corporate Governance in August 2022. His working experience, he started his career in civil service in 2004 and later obtained diploma in public administration from Intan. Used to be posted as Assistant Director at Legal Affairs Division at Prime Minister Department, later at the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Cabinet, Constitution and Intergovernmental Relations Division, and later as the Principal Assistant Secretary at the Finance Division for the Ministry of Education. At the moment, he is the Principal Assistant Secretary at the Administrative Division in the National Anti-Financial Crime Center, NFCC, an agency under the Prime Minister Department. The main role of NFCC is to be coordinator to more than 12 law enforcement agencies involving in enforcing various laws related to financial crime. And his father also currently the Mufti of Perak state government. So without much further ado, Mr. Saiful Islam, you may share your presentation and all the best to you.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. Can you see the slide? Okay.
Yes.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning to all of you. Thank you to Mr. Moderator. Yang berbahagia, Professor Dr. Azmawani Abdul Rahman, President and CEO of PBS. Yang berbahagia Datuk Akbar Moiduni, Deputy President of MAICSA, distinguished guests and Mr. Panelists and friends. Today, I would like to convey my presentation on what have been right for my project paper entitled Board Characteristic and Anti-Corruption Policy Disclosure in Malaysia, Malaysian East Companies. So these for first page, these are my presentation outline. Next is the introduction of the paper. The Global Infrastructure Anti-Corruption Center, or GIACC, an international independent, not-for-profit organization which develops and promotes anti-corruption measures for the infrastructure sector, believes that corruption can only be prevented and dealt with if both public and private sector organizations implement effective anti-corruption measures as a necessary and core part of their day-to-day corporate procurement and project management.
Mr. Saiful, maybe you
Yes.
can click the slide button, the slide presentation button, down bottom right.
All right, bottom right.
Okay, that one. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Recent fiasco of One Malaysia Development Berhad and other several local corporate misconduct in Malaysia have moved several regulatory institutions to come up with corporate governance regulations in an effort to reduce and curb corruption Malaysia has finally enacted the new section to include Section 17A of the MAICSA Act, or formerly known as the Corporate Liability Provisions, where commercial organization could be charged for corruption offences. With this new amendment of the Act, companies are finally allocating resources towards the integrity management, having proper compliance and put in place adequate procedure in order to prevent any person associated with this commercial organization from getting involved in such act of bribery or corruption. For the research gap, there is a paucity of published research that examine the extent of anti-corruption disclosure and the influence of CG mechanism in emerging nations like Malaysia. The previous research more focused on developed nations compared to emerging economies and developing countries. This study will examine the influence of board characteristics like board size, women on board, and independent of board members on corporate anti-corruption policy disclosure by the ACE listed companies in Malaysia. ACE listed company in Malaysia, formerly known as the MAICSA market, which prior to August 3rd, 2009, it's a market that sponsored driven market designed for companies with growth prospect. So for the problem statement, for many years, investors and other players in the capital market rely upon comprehensive corporate disclosure and financial information. And companies began to provide information on polluted related activities as a result of pressure from regulators. The demand subsequently increased for the firm's corruption-related activities as part of the non-financial information, as it can have a significant impact on the company's overall performance and reputation. Much of the studies of corporate corruption and bribery have not received much attention in developing countries. So the adoption of anti-corruption business model is closely linked to each country's laws and embedded into the respective corporate governance system. In Malaysia, following series of several local corporate misconduct like Felda FGV scandal, as well as MDB FESCO, then came the creation of Section 70A of the MAICSA Act. Studies from the GICC also found that corruption in private sector is the same as corruption in the public sector, except that the cost is not directly paid by the taxpayer. Government can promote a greater private sector integrity by encouraging companies to adopt stronger anti-corruption practices and robust corporate governance system to compete fairly and openly. Effective boardroom and disclosure provide the necessary check and balance on the recent example of corporate governance failures. Higher level of corruption disclosure helps increase the transparency and accountability of firms. Thus, the previous literature motivated me to consider that anti-corruption disclosure has significant value to the efficiency of organization and their commitment against corruption. Okay, I now come to the research question and objectives. For the research question, first part, is there a significant relationship between number of board size and disclosure of anti-corruption policies? is there a significant positive relationship between total board independence and disclosure of anti-corruption policies? Third, is there a significant positive relationship between number of women on board and disclosure of anti-corruption policies? And fourth, is there a significant positive relationship between a firm size with the disclosure of anti-corruption policies? For the research objective, to examine the influence of box size to the extent of anti-corruption policies disclosure. Second, to examine the influence of independent director to the extent of anti-corruption policies disclosure. Third, to examine the influence of board gender to the extent of anti-corruption policies disclosure. And fourth, to examine the influence of firm size to the extent of anti-corruption policies disclosure. For the scope and significance of the study, the scope of the study is the firms listed in the Access, Certainty and Efficiency, or ACE market of Bursa Malaysia, engaged in the anti-corruption disclosure, are the focus of this research. So here the expectation is, it is worth looking at how board composition, namely board size, board gender, independent director, and firm size influence the disclosure of a company anti-corruption policy. The board composition focus on the impact of independent non-executive directors, board gender as represented by the presence of women on the board, board size, and firm size. For the significance of the study, this study is timely and serves as a wake-up call to Malaysian companies or firms, especially to the board of directors, on its implication to their commercial organizations. Anti-corruption disclosure has significant value to the efficiency of organization and their commitment against corruption. The study contributes to the literature regarding the relationship between corporate governance mechanism and anti-corruption policy disclosure. And lastly, it's setting an example from the top, which is the board of directors, push the integration of anti-bribery and corruption policies into the firm's culture as managing of risk related to the fraud, bribery, and corruption is within the board's control measures. Okay, for the theoretical framework and hypothesis development, here the independent variables are I choose three. The board characteristics, board gender, board size, and board independent. And the control variable is firm size. And the dependent variable is the anti-corruption policies disclosure. Here the hypothesis which I managed to arrive is, first, for H1, there is a significant relationship between board size with anti-corruption policy disclosure. H2, there is a significant relationship between board independence with anti-corruption policy disclosure. H3, there is a significant relationship between more women on board with anti-corruption policy disclosure. And fourth, for H4, there is a significant relationship between firm size with anti-corruption policy disclosure. For the research methodology, the data source and sample selection. So to answer the research question and to test the research hypothesis, the study using quantitative data and using the manual content analysis, sourcing from secondary sources, which is the annual report of the ACE market companies. The ACE market of Bursa Malaysia was selected as sample frame, and all the necessary data were extracted from the company's annual report for the financial year 2019, 2020, and 2021. Financial services firms are excluded due to different accounting policies and regulation requirement, as they are under the jurisdiction of Central Bank of Malaysia, The research instrument used here for this research can be retrieved from the Bursa Malaysia website, and the study also used the companies that were listed as a total number of 147 companies as at 7th June 2022. 50 samples selection representing different type of industry were selected from companies listed under the ACE market of Bursa Malaysia. For the measurement of variable, for first variable, the board size, which it represents by the total number of directors on the board. Secondly, for the women on board, it is represented by the number of female directors to total board members. Third, the board independence were represented by the number of independent directors. And fourth, the firm size is represented by the log of total assets. And all this information were come from annual reports downloaded from the Bursa Malaysia website. These are from the research findings, the descriptive statistics. All data obtained for the study will be evaluated and analyzed using descriptive statistics, normality test, correlation analysis, multi-collinearity test, and multiple regression analysis. The results of the data were thoroughly examined and the findings were discussed and concluded. These are the results of the descriptive statistics. For the multi-collinearity test, from the table, the VIF for each variable is lower than 1. Which indicate that the variables are slightly moderately correlated. It means that the independent variables are not influenced by the dependent variable. For the regression analysis, out of 4 variables, it was found out that this research, the firm size found to be statistically significant towards anti-corruption policy disclosure. For the summary of findings, is there a significant, for the hypothesis, it was rejected. For the second hypothesis, if there is a significant relationship between board independence with anti-corruption policy disclosure, and it was found to be, the result was to be rejected. For the third hypothesis, there is significant relationship between more women on board with anti-corruption policy disclosure, and the result was rejected. And fourth, there is significant relationship between firm size with anti-corruption policy disclosure, and the result is accepted. For the conclusion, many studies, both from the past and present, have demonstrated that corruption has considerable negative impact and repercussion on economic growth, trade, and development. Hence, the demands subsequently increase for the firm's corruption-related activities as part of the non-financial information, as it can have significant impact on companies' overall performance and reputation. From the discussion, it is found that board size and board independence statistically not significant due to small and limited sample size. The relationship between board size with anti-corruption policy disclosure, board independence with anti-corruption policy disclosure, and women on board is not statistically supported. For the contribution of study, in terms of body of knowledge, it extends the research of compliance of anti-corruption policy in the Malaysian East market. In this aspect, The study allows the listed company to prepare businesses and civil society organization who wants to step up their efforts in fighting corruption before they transfer to the main market to gain access to a larger pool of investors, particularly institutions with higher liquidity and better price discovery, where they want to seek to improve the valuation of their companies. In terms of practical contribution from the empirical result, it allows the regulators and other monitoring agencies to come up with necessary policies, standards, plan, and guideline on comprehensive framework of anti-corruption policy. For this study, I found out that the limitation of the study is limiting to the sample of S-market companies only. This is because of the strict listing requirement imposed both by the Bursa and the MCCG 2021. And also the data collected was limited to the observation of annual reports. For future study, it is suggested that the study extend the scope of research by having a thorough interview process in collecting the data. Based on the benefits of having interview session with the top management, it helps to capture relevant details that might be overlooked only by looking at the annual report. By having this, more comprehensive conclusion can be made on the anti-corruption policy disclosure. With that, I wrap up my presentation. Thank you. Back to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Saiful, for presenting right on time. So now I'd like to invite any of the panelists to share your thoughts.
Okay, can I start first?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, can you? Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. Good morning. Okay, Encik Saiful Islam. Okay, who else? Yeah, would be the suitable person to be conducting a research on this topic, other than someone who is in the NFCC, right? Yes, Cik Saiful.
Yes.
Okay, so you should be the right person to. Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Prof.
Okay, all right. Okay. Yeah. So your study was on the board characteristics and anti-corruption policy. So you had the what do you call it? The variables that you use for your IVs, yeah, on the board on gender, on board size. Is it the number? Yeah, board size.
Board size. Yes.
Board independence. Yeah, and also your firm size. So from the slides that you have presented just now, so you're trying to say that it's only firm size that has a positive significant relationship,
yes,
right? Yes. So the other three variables, they are none. It's not statistically supported, right? Yes. Okay. Could you just extend a little bit, from the research that you have done? Why was it that these three IVs, was not statistically supported? In relation to the anti-corruption policy.
My answer, Prof, probably because apart from the sample size is small, and and the year, maybe because of the year for the data collection is not
it was over a 3-year period, right? That's what you
right? So it's not quite lengthy enough to collect the data, probably.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So the 50 samples that you use are over a range of industry, right? Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So apart from that, you were what do you call it? recommending that, so probably apart from doing it as a quantitative study, maybe, should opt for maybe a qualitative study. Is that what you're trying to recommend, right?
Yes, interview, yeah.
I see. So, of course, with that, that might be possible. I mean, having interview sessions with top management, right? Probably you get a better insight into it.
Yes.
Okay. So, overall, it's a very good study, right? Okay, that what you have done, right? You covered probably maybe, for future research, potential students, in this Masters in Corporate Governance can look at other board characteristics, right? See other governance mechanisms, to look at whether there are significant impact of those characteristics or mechanisms on the anti-corruption policy, right? Because I think that is badly needed in Malaysia. I think, I mean, like we want to ensure that there is this culture of anti-corruption behavior, anti-corruption culture, not just in the what do you call it, the public sector, but of course much more in the private sector. Although you mentioned just now, it doesn't have an impact on the tax, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So very good. I would actually like to look at the full paper actually. Other than just your what do you call it,
slides
presentation, right? Okay. So I think that should be about all. Probably, and then, like I said just now, to extend further studies into probably the main market. I think there's been some studies being done into the same effect, right? So that is why you're opting for the, what do you call it?
Not many
market,
papers,
right?
Yeah, not many papers on S market.
I see. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Prof.
For a good presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Yes.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Prof. And Ms. Leong Oiwa. Is your mic working?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry,
good.
my video doesn't have the background. I must congratulate Tuan Saiful for this research done. It's very comprehensive, and I like the fact that you have used, looked at board size, women participation, and also the number of independent directors. Now, I believe the results didn't really come out as you expected, because looking at the board size, independent directors and women directors, you got a rejection result itself, but the firm size was accepted. I would encourage you, I agree with Prof. Nobijan, you may want to expand it to the main market companies that have done more. But you would note that with the Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance encouraging the number of directors, particularly independent directors, to be half the board size, there may be a difference if you look at ACE companies, because most of the ACE companies will just keep to the minimum of 1/3. So you may want to find some correlation where the companies have got a larger number of independent directors. Similarly, for women directors, if there is a larger number. But this is a very good research, because if you look at the ACE companies that you have selected, they are mainly technology-based and industrial products. And these are very technical people running the company. So to them, they may not focus so much on governance, but your research paper does show that if they did focus on this governance structure, particularly on the anti-corruption policies itself, and expand on it, it will make a difference for these companies. And of course, in the market, when companies have a higher level of governance structure, there will be more demands for their market share lah. So I like the study. It's very relevant to the ACE companies itself. Thank you very much. Back to you,
Thank you,
Tuan Osman.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you to both panel members, and of course to the audience. If you would like to ask any question to Mr. Saiful, feel free to do so right in the chat box. Do not wait until the last minute because Mr. Saiful had to do a little bit some traveling to Kuala Lumpur by this morning. So feel free to write to him in the chat box, and he will be able to answer. And okay, so now let's go to the second presenter. Mr. Saiful, you can stop sharing your slides now. So our second presenter will be Mrs. Adriani Abdul Rauf. And she hails from JB, okay, Bangsa Johor, but currently residing in Bandar Baru, Bangi. And she graduated with bachelor's degree in electronic engineering in 2006 and completed her Master of Business Administration with specialization in corporate governance at PBS in August 2022. She started her career in the private sector in 2006 before joining the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MAIDA, in 2008. After 4 years stint in MAIDA, she joined the Ministry of Communication and Multimedia as an Assistant Secretary. In 2017, she was assigned to the Ministry of Plantation Industry and Commodities and has worked there for 3 years. And she is currently working at the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, focusing on water regulatory. So, Mrs. Adriani, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Hold on. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, sure. Okay, can see.
Okay, first of all, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I bid to Prof. Dr. Asmawani, Datuk Akbar Moidani, Prof. Razman, fellow corporate governance mates, and everyone who are present for today. So today I'm going to present to you the topic that I have chosen for my final thesis, which is exploring the effects of board attributes and audit committee attributes on firms' environmental, social, and governance (ESG) disclosure. Okay, basically, this is the outline of my presentation. I'm going to explain to you the background, going to the literature review, the research methodology that I have undertaken, the results or the findings and analysis of my results, and finally, the conclusion. Okay, first of all, the background. So just to brief you all a bit, as we all know previously, the ultimate goal of companies have been to maximize shareholders' wealth. However, things have greatly changed, whereby ever since corporate scandals have started to emerge, most notably the cases from Enron, Wells Fargo, which highlighted poor governance practices as well as a lack of proper information disclosure. So all of this has caused growing concerns by stakeholders on the damage caused by this corporate activities, and also it has sparked calls for more stringent guidelines, as well as higher transparency of companies' information. And because of this, stakeholders, they want to be informed of the activities of the firms, particularly those where they have stakes in it. All right. So all of these recent developments has led to the focus on ESG information by firms. So why is this ESG values important? Okay, among the benefits is that it can help to attract investments, it can increase market penetrations of these firms, and also they can fulfill stakeholder demands, create value, attract the best of talents, and they can build, companies can build quality customer base, and most important, they can fend off financial as well as environmental risk. So companies that these days, companies that do not practice ESG, they could potentially lose foreign investments and face sanctions. And among the cases that happened recently among to Malaysian companies is the FGV and Top Glove, where they face a ban from the US CBP due to allegations of forced labor issues. But despite all of this, it must be acknowledged that there have been an increase in constituents in the Bursa Malaysia's F4GBM index, which is a globally benchmark stock exchange measure for ESG compliance companies. And because of this, more prominent industry leaders have also started to accept the need for greater ESG adoption among companies. This can be due to the efforts taken by regulators, such as improvements of the MCCG, sharing of global best global the problem statement that I have derived from this is that, okay, there is a vast body of literature on ESG disclosure in recent years, done, for example, by Tamimi and Sebastianelli, Abu and Diab, Belter, Al-Amosh and Khatib. And also, there have been several studies which analyzed the impact of board independence on firms' ESG disclosure. But however, it is noticed that most of this study were conducted in more developed countries such as Europe and the US. There have also been past research on the link between board gender diversity and ESG disclosure. But these studies, they mostly produced varied outcomes, some negative and some positive. In terms of the effects of audit committee independence on ESG disclosure, there have been insufficient studies on this research. And overall on ESG disclosure, there have been limited literature on this kind of studies in Asia. So therefore, examining the relationship would be, in this context, as particularly in Malaysia, it would be timely. So this has led to the research questions, research objectives, which are to determine the effect of board independence on ESG disclosure. And secondly, to determine the effect of board gender diversity on ESG disclosure. And thirdly, to determine the effect of audit committee independence on ESG disclosure. Okay. Okay. Next would be the underpinning theory of my study is the stakeholder theory. Okay, based on this stakeholder theory, it emphasizes the stakeholders' interests and concerns that are the central focus of this theory, and it's the very reason for the existence of any business. And under this theory, there is this basic presumption that corporate disclosure is a means for the management to furnish information to the stakeholders and responding to their various demands. And why I choose this theory is because it's relevant to the current situation, whereby stakeholders impose more pressure on firms to be more transparent and to disclose information related to their ESG practices. This is to satisfy their growing interest and concerns due to the recent developments of firms' corporate activities. Now I'm going to explain on the dependent variable. First is the ESG disclosure. So past research have investigated the relationship between mostly between ESG disclosure and firm values, ownership structures, and also what characteristics such as CEO duality and board size. And it's also observed that this research mostly will focus in countries, developed countries such as United States and Europe. Okay. Next is the independent variable. As you can see from the summary here, in terms of region, again, most of the past research have been done mostly in Europe, particularly Italy. Okay, particularly Italy. Okay, and then apart from that, it has also been done in America and the rest of Europe, and also most notably GCC countries. In terms of the outcome, it has produced mixed outcomes, some with positive relationship and some with a negative relationship. In terms of audit committee independence, so far I found like 3 research have been done before. That's why this is insufficient. I would like to investigate more on the relationship between ESG disclosure as well as audit committee independence. Okay, in terms of hypothesis development, based on the things that I have explained before, this has brought to the hypothesis, which is H1. There is a significantly positive relationship between board independence and ESG disclosure. And secondly, H2, there is a significantly positive relationship between board gender diversity and ESG disclosure. And thirdly, H3, there is a significantly positive relationship between audit committee independence as well as ESG disclosure. Okay, thirdly, we'll go into research methodology. So with the methodology that I have undertaken is quantitative. And in terms of population, it concentrated on all public listed companies in Malaysia listed in the F4GPM index. However, based on the availability of data in Refinitiv Icon database, we only go for complete data. And I went for an observation period of 10 years, which is starting from 2011 until 2020. So after we have taken the 10-year period, it seems that there are firms with incomplete data. So these firms have been excluded from the list. So in the end, there were only 37 companies which make up the population size for this study. All right. Okay, here are the explanation for each of the dependent variable as well as independent variables. And for this study, I have also included 2 control variables, which are firm size, which is calculated by the value of natural logarithm of total assets, and the ROA, which is the company's net income prior to financing costs divided by total assets. And all this data for dependent variable, independent variable, as well as control variable was obtained from the Refinitiv Icon online database. Okay, so here is my research framework. This diagram denotes the relationship between the board independence, board gender diversity, and audit committee independence with ESG disclosure, denoted by H1, H2, as well as H3. Okay, now we finally come into the findings and analysis. Okay, here is the result of the descriptive analysis, normality test, as well as multicollinearity test. In terms of the descriptive analysis, based on this table, for ESG, overall, it's generally good, but there is, it must be noted, there is a huge gap between the minimum and maximum, which is between 2 points. The score was between 2.7 to 86.4. But it has been noted that for companies that with ESG scores below 10, they have since made a healthy improvement towards the later part of the observation. So their scores have been seen to increase to be in the 20 to 40 range of the score. Next is board independence. the average is 51.6%, and most firms adhere to the minimum ratio, which is 1/3. And mostly this what do you call that, ratio have been maintained during the 10-year period of observation. And thirdly is in terms of gender diversity, where the average is 17.9%. And it can be deduced that majority still find it difficult to comply with the 30% target. But on the opposite, in terms of audit committee independence, most firms do not have problems to adhere to the listing requirements, and they have been seen to adopt the step-up practices by MCCG. In terms of normality test, most data has been seen to lie within the normal distribution, except for ROA, because there is an existence of an outlier. And in terms of multi-collinearity, all variables are not highly correlated with one another. Okay, okay, this is the result for the regression analysis. Okay, first of all, I would like to explain that the R-squared found from this analysis is equivalent to 0.25, indicating that 25.48% of variance in ESG disclosure can be explained by the elements that I've chosen, which is the board independence, board gender diversity, and audit committee independence. So in terms of, okay, if you can see here, the T value. Okay, you can see here the T value. Okay, the table shows a T value of 7.55 and a P value of 0.00. But while for board gender diversity, records a T value of 7.5 and a P value of 0.00. Since both the p-value for board independence and board gender diversity is recorded at less than 0.05, so both variables are significant and confirmed to be determinants of the ESG disclosure. And they have a positive coefficient value, implying that both variables are positively correlated to ESG disclosure, which ultimately fulfills the expectation based on previous studies. Okay, this result also suggests that both variables, they have significantly positive relationships. Hence, H1 and H2 are accepted. Okay. On the other hand, audit committee independence, it recorded a T value of minus 0.1995 and P value of 0.84. Since the P value is bigger than 0.05, it can be deduced that this determinant does not play a significant role in ESG disclosure. Therefore, H3 is not accepted. Sorry. So, based on these results, the regression equation has been predicted as follows, as denoted here. All right, and below are the summary of the result of each of the hypotheses, where H1 is accepted, H2 is accepted, and H3 is not accepted. Okay, conclusion. All right. Okay, I will go through for each, answering each of the research questions that have been constructed for this study. First one is, what is the effect of board independence on ESG disclosure? First, it shows that for the first question, it shows that the existence of more independent directors does motivate firms to disclose more ESG information. Okay, this could be due to the nature of the role of independent directors, which is normally they are more aligned with stakeholders' interests, and they are not directly related to the firm. Because of that, they are more objective in their analysis, and it also prevents groupthink. And the result also, it supports the outcome from most of the previous study, and it is in line with the stakeholder theory. Secondly, second question is what is the effect of board gender diversity on ESG disclosure? Okay, from this study, it shows that higher female representation in the board of directors of companies does result in higher possibility for firms to be more transparent and disclose their ESG information. So this can be due to the significant traits that female normally have, which is normally they are more transparent, then they are more sensitive towards social and environmental causes, and they have flair for social reasoning. They like to question. Okay, and then it is also seen that this determinant, which is board gender diversity, it has the highest influence among all three determinants studied. And then this also shows that it signals for greater effort by regulators to push companies to increase their female representation on boards. This is also consistent with the outcome in earlier studies and also in line with the stakeholder theory. And last but not least is the third question: what is the effect of audit committee independence on ESG disclosure? Okay, it can be deduced from the study that audit committee independence does not substantially affect ESG disclosure. And why is this? I believe this is because maybe this is due to committees, the key role of the audit committee, which leans more towards financial reporting rather than non-financial reporting, and also the reporting structure of boards, where the audit committee boards have to report to the main board. So the main board has the ultimate power in the decision to disclose the information. Among all three determinants that have been studied, audit committee independence is the weakest link, and also it contradicts the outcome of previous studies. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is the contribution. Okay, first of all, the contribution of this study is to the literature of corporate governance, where it expands the scope of existing body of literature on ESG disclosure. First of all, the determinants, because previously most of the relationships was done between ESG disclosure and also firm performance. And in terms of area where the study was done, as I explained before, it was mostly done in Europe as well as US. And also the dimensions of ESG, there have been many studies which have been done, which goes to individual dimension of the ESG. And secondly, in terms of corporate players, okay, this study serves to provide insights to improve broad practices of the firms. Most notably is the in terms of assessment of independent status of the board directors that they want to hire, and also the mechanisms on the hiring of women directors, and as well as the tenure. And by having all this input and practicing it, it can help to improve the reputation of the firms, and subsequently it can attract more investment, attract more income, and of course improve the performance. Okay, how this can contribute to the policy makers and regulators, because the input can be used to enhance current rules and devise new strategies. And also, for example, it can study the impact of amendments to MCCG guidelines in terms of, for example, the female representation on board. And of course, it also has a theoretical contribution, where it can this study observes the significance of each relationship and its connection to the stakeholder theory, and it can be seen that some of the relationship it can be applied to the Malaysian context, while some not. For example, in terms of relationship between ESG disclosure with the audit committee independence. Okay, here are some limitations that have been encountered throughout the course of the study. First one is incomplete data. Incomplete data because, as I've mentioned before, the data was obtained from the list of Malaysian public listed companies available in Refinitiv icon, and the list it points to some discrepancy, whereby the number of companies recorded is slightly less than the actual number in the Bursa index. And then, so conforming to the list available, and after performing data cleanup, only 37 made it to the final population of the study. And if the data had been more complete, perhaps it can increase the number of observation, and it would have been a more comprehensive study. Okay, the second one would be limited scope of study, because only 25.4% of variance in ESG disclosure can be explained by the elements chosen by the three. Okay, can be explained by the three elements which have been chosen, which means that another 75.4% of variance in an ESG disclosure could be predicted by other factors which have not yet been explored in this study. Okay, and of course, these limitations explained before, it's also related to time factor, which is also a partial constraint to the study, because since the study has need to be completed within the period of 2 trimesters, of course, the scope of the study had to be limited to make it feasible. If there were more time, a more in-depth research could have been conducted, and the scope could even be expanded. And last limitation that was obvious or encountered during the study was the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, which started at the end of 2019. Because in terms of data, it can be observed for certain variables, particularly the ROA. It demonstrates a slightly different pattern from the year where the pandemic hits, because it's common knowledge that many companies were affected. So the magnitude of the impact might be differ from one company to another. Okay. So suggestions for future research. Okay, of course, there's a room to explore other factors which have not been investigated, the remaining 75%. For example, board size, frequency of the board meetings, board skills, culture, diversity, and so on. And also, perhaps the population size could be, and the time frame of the study could be expanded to include more public listed companies. Okay, if the amount of data is allowed, and also if there are more time, as I mentioned earlier, more in-depth investigation could be conducted, and perhaps a more accurate results could be obtained. And then, and perhaps the future researcher could also broaden the scope of firms, perhaps to include public listed companies in the ASEAN regions. So you can see how this fares in other country, comparison with other countries as well. And also it could also focus on small and medium enterprises, because these companies, they have different amount of resources, their scale of business, as well as their market reach. So it could offer a different take on the implementation of the ESG disclosure. And also, last but not least, is the research can also focus on the individual dimension of ESG, which is namely the environmental, social, and governance. Okay, the recommendation that I have put up, gathered for this study. First of all, I noticed that most important is collective effort by government, regulators, and corporate players. This is to ensure that the effectiveness of the initiatives that has been drawn up. And also, secondly, is to further strategize and amplify visibility of initiatives by regulators. No doubt, there has been many initiatives being put in place, but of course, due to the recent events or the global change trends or challenges, regular review of guidelines is needed so that it is being kept in line. And also, I think it's also important for regulators to focus on capacity building or ESG leadership, so that these leaders of the companies, they are more well-versed with the ESG framework. So hence it making it more easier for the company to embrace the whole concept. And thirdly, is to put a standard reference in place on ESG disclosure, because although there have been guidelines, but it's observed that poor guidelines could hamper these firms from making the effort to report their ESG activities. So for that matter, that firms tend to follow that there are evidence where firms tend to follow various templates or formats. So there have been efforts by the regulators to put in place a fixed format so that it eases the process of companies to produce the ESG report. Fourthly, it's also important for regulators to reach out to firms. That there should be a two-way communication between regulators and also firms, because regulators cannot simply just put in place guidelines and just expect firms to follow, because they are the ones who are doing the business. So it's important to reach out to them, provide support, and also obtain inputs on what can be improved and so on. The fifth point I would like to highlight is to leverage on the power of media, because, for example, the mainstream media these days, they advocate, they show a lot of news on corporate governance issues, and at the same time, they advocate the practices of these governance measures. And these news, they can update the public on current governance landscape. And through this effort, this can at the same time indirectly cultivate a culture among the public also, not just the firms, to that is rooted in good ethics. Okay, and also through the power of media, for example, social media, it can help to enhance the firm's visibility among, for example, their clients and also the publics, and show what's the effort on ESG framework or concept. And it can help the firms to understand the current public sentiment on ESG. And because of this, I believe it can motivate the firms to operate more ethically. And the sixth point, I think it's important, is the commitment by firms to enhance the board composition. Most importantly, strengthen their recruitment process and oversee the actual independent status of each directors, have a strict tenure limit, and also a strong gender policy to show the commitment to the what has been advocated by the regulators. And I think last but not least is the proactive, I think it's proactive efforts by firms to capitalize on platforms provided by regulators, because there has been many programs provided by the government, by the regulators, and it's a waste if the firms do not utilize it. So they should be more proactive in that sense. Okay, that's all for my presentation for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Adriani. So I'd like to invite the panel members.
Okay, can I start? Mrs. Adriani, right? Okay. Right. Firstly, I would like to actually, congratulate Dr. Razman. Actually, I think you have been the supervisor for this, these two supervisees, and I think you have made a very splendid, guidance to them. I mean, the fact that they are attached to these various government sectors. So this, the topics that you have chose, the topics that you and your supervisors have chosen together, I think is just suitable for them. It's just because I can see from their presentation, they are so passionate with what they're doing. So like Mrs. Adriani, I think that was a very good presentation. That despite the fact that you had only 2 trimesters to do it, right? But I think you have done a comprehensive job, in carrying out this research. Okay, very interesting findings. As if you go to compare from the previous presenter, of course, it was a different independent variable used. Okay, so Mrs. Adriani, so in a sense that board independence, and gender diversity, there was actually a positive relationship. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. Okay. Except for the audit committee independence, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. As for I couldn't see the rest of the slide for the firm size and the ROA.
Oh,
it's-
Okay, hold on.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, that was not in the slide. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Never mind. It's okay. Okay. So it's interesting to note that out of those variables, the one with the highest influence is board gender diversity, right? Is
Yes.
that what it is? Yeah,
Hold on.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Okay. And you did mention, Puan Adriani, that about the ESG score. As far as your ESG dimensions are concerned, disclosure. Could you explain briefly explain on your ESG score?
You mean
Yeah, your independent variable, your ESG dimensions. Can you just briefly explain? Yeah.
you mean the scores obtained for
the dimensions that you use for the ESG?
Yeah, it's the environment, the social,
Okay,
and
yeah,
the government. Yeah, correct.
All right,
And
okay.
governance.
Okay, right. Because you did mention ESG score somewhere in your your earlier slides.
Yes, correct.
Oh.
It's the ESG score is not I didn't take the individual, but rather the collective ESG score for the
I see,
company.
yeah. Okay.
That's why I suggested for the future research, perhaps they could investigate the relationship between each determinants with the individual pillars of the ESG.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
to go deep into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that I know, Puan Adriani, you have actually opened the floodgate for future students, in this program to be looking at various angles, various other variables, for them to actually carry out this study, and of course extend it further. All right. So apart from that, I think, Puan Adriani, you have done such a good splendid job. And it's very interesting. And one thing I know, you had in your recommendation, with regards to the pandemic, I would actually love to see whether, love to actually probably in the near future, other studies that actually, take effect of the post pre and the post pandemic, because I think this is an unprecedented event that occurred, in the country, not just the country, throughout the world, and it's of course not within our control. It doesn't include corporate misbehaviors. It's nothing of that sort. But this is something that is not within our control. So it'll be interesting for future students to even look at that. Okay. So thank you so much, Puan Adriani. Good job.
Thank you very much, Prof.
All right.
Ms. Leong Aiwa.
Thank you. I totally agree with Prof. Nobijan. Looking at pre and post-COVID, it's going to be a very interesting study itself. Now, particularly in this topic of the ESG, one of the questions I would like to ask is, it's not really identified in your slide whether you have focused on companies that are environmentally sensitive industries, or it's just an overall one?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. Yeah, actually, the focus of all all public listed companies listed in the index, and not
I
to a specific sector or industry.
All right. Because you did
Yes.
mention earlier about Top Glove and FGV on the
yeah.
issues
Correct.
itself.
Correct.
I also agree with Prof. Nobijan. I actually salute the energy that you have in terms of doing this research, and also in your presentation as well.
Thank you.
It's a lot of information that you've given, but you have given it on a very structured basis. And I like your conclusion in terms of your findings itself. Of course, it's different from the first speaker, but in terms of ESG, if we look at ESG, as we all know in the layman's term itself, it's focus really on the social part is on your employees and your community. The governance is very much how you do business, and the environment, of course, is related to climate change and all those. I like the fact that you have gone into very details in terms of your studies, looking at your data. I thought the data that you have for you to reach this conclusion was very good, but you are now challenging yourself to actually expand the data. And I totally agree with you. And as what Prof. Nobijan mentioned, maybe you want to look at both the pre and post COVID. Now, one of the other things that I noted in terms of your findings, board and gender diversity itself, you have positive results, but not the audit committee. And you rightly pinpointed it out that this is really due to the structure of the audit committee, because in the listing requirement, the focus of the audit committee is very financial based, rather than looking at the overall how business is done in the ESG environment itself. That's a very good point to make. Now, one of my recommendations for you in your future research would be, if you look at audit committee and board independence. Now, audit committee are supposed to comprise of, majority independent directors. There should be a correlation there, but somehow your result came out differently. But I want to challenge you to actually look at companies moving forward, or in the last 5 years or so, since Bursa has made it mandatory for sustainability reporting. You may want to look at the connection of the sustainability companies with a very focused sustainability committee and their ESG scores, because we know that in Malaysia you've got a lot of Chinaman companies. They just cut and paste. So we want to move away from that, and that's where the regulators are actually focusing on. They don't want people to just cut and paste. They want action to be done. So it is not just conformance, it is performance. So on that note, congratulations on this research paper. Very good recommendations. I love your energy again. All right, back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for both panel member, and again, for the audience, if you like to ask question to Ms. Adrani, then you can write in the chat box, so she will be able to entertain your question. So now let's go to our third presenter. By the way, when all these students were doing their project paper last year, ESG actually quite a hot topic, and that's why the remaining presenter also will be focusing on the ESG, but maybe on slightly different angle from what the second presenter, Mr. Jadi, has done. So our third presenter, Mrs. Annie Suzita binti Khidzir, born in Kedah currently live in Dubai, UAE. I think it's 6 o'clock or something over there. It's summer, but very cold. And so she has been waiting to eagerly to present her research finding. She has a bachelor in communication from UPM and diploma in office management and technology. And she joined public service in 2007 to obtain diploma in public administration from Intan. And her first posting was at Policy and International Relations Division, Ministry of Education from 2007 until 2012. And her second posting is at Infrastructure Development Division, Ministry of Tourism Malaysia from 2012 to 2015. And her last posting back to Ministry of Education at Procurement Division before pursuing MBA at PBS under the Hadiah Latihan Persekutuan. She is currently on the non-paid leave, accompanying spouse as Director Education Malaysia in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. So, without much further ado, I'd like to invite Ms. Anis to do her presentation.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Yang berbahagia Prof. Dr. Azmawani, yang berbahagia Datuk Akbar Moidani, yang berusul Dr. Ahmad Razman, panel member Associate Professor Norbijan, and also Ms. Leong, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Okay, today I'll be sharing about my study. The title that I've chosen is Effect of Board Characteristics, Board Gender, Cultural Diversity and Independent Board Members on Corporate Social Responsibility Disclosure in Malaysia, Singapore and Indonesia. And these are the outline in my slide that I'm going to be presenting. Okay, first of all, the introduction. As we know, the field of corporate social responsibility has received a lot of attention in the recent years from practitioners and also scholars all around the world. And particularly in Malaysia, our unique country with a wide range of racial, ethnic and religious view, as well as a thriving economy. Its economic resiliency has attracted international investors throughout the years, first in the aftermath of the 1997 Southeast Asian economic crisis, and more recently in the wake of global financial upheaval. So in research from Zhang and Gao in 2017, CSR reporting companies have greater investment efficiency than non-reporting companies. Also, it is crucial to have and to be presented by board of directors that highly competent and efficient. Study also has concluded that board characteristic had a significant effect on CSR. Okay, moving along on the problem statement. Numerous studies have proven that acceptance of CSR among consumers, employees, and other stakeholders groups, and several studies have been carried out. However, the outcome have been variable, and there has not been much convincing and reliable proof of it. Business should be judged on more than just their economic success and financial performance, because they are also obliged to conduct responsibly in society. So social innovation also will help businesses create new goods and market as they prepare for the future difficulties. CSR and sustainability as the methodical identification of opportunities that also contribute to sustainable growth, not just as one-sided risk and environmental management or patronage, need to be addressed urgently. So internal adjustment that integrate CSR and sustainability within the core business must be undertaken in order to take full advantage of these opportunities. Communication about CSR is critical in resolving social and environmental issues and effectively participating in dialogue with stakeholders, such as investors and the general public. Does this problem need to be addressed urgently to determine whether board characteristics such board gender diversity, cultural diversity, and independent board members will affect on CSR sustainability reporting score in the public listed company? So the scope of my studies, the investors' relation and communication are critical. Keeping shareholders informed will help to avoid unpleasant shocks. The CSR responsibility reporting score will be this focus in my study. This study also conducts a literature review of existing theoretical reflection, findings, and gaps on research undertaken on the relationship between board gender, cultural diversity, and independent board members on corporate social responsibility disclosure in 3 countries, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. This study was conducted among public listed firms in Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia for 10 years of observation, starting from 2011 to 2020, and analyzed board characteristics such gender diversity, cultural diversity, and independent board members on corporate social responsibility, sustainability reporting score based on database available in the Econ data stream, Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange, Indonesia Stock Exchange, and Singapore Stock Exchange. And the reason for choosing public listed companies in 3 different countries in the Southeast Asia is because to observe the undertaken approaches and companies' behavior in their respective economic ambience. Okay, the objective of the study is to identify whether there is a significant positive relationship between board gender diversity and CSR sustainability reporting score. Next is to identify whether there is a significant positive relationship between cultural diversity and CSR sustainability reporting score. And the last objective is to identify whether there is a significant positive relationship between the independent board members and CSR sustainability reporting score. The underpinning theory in my study is legitimacy theories. So in research of Ching and Gerard in 2017, investing in CSR reporting transparency should be viewed as a strategy for gaining business credibility. The emerging economy, social and environmental issues need businesses and governments to adhere to regulation principles and conventions, as well as to voluntarily provide social and environmental data to ensure compliance. Legitimacy theory serves as a legitimate reason in this study and explain how organizations behave when it comes to implementing and developing CSR disclosure of information in order to fulfill their social contract, which allows them to recognize their goal and survive in the fast-paced and upside-down environment, especially in this pandemic time during this study was conducted. There's a research also found the number of sustainability reports released, the amount of information presented, and the quality of disclosure are all on the rise by applying this theory in their research. Okay, the literature review in this study. First one on the CSR disclosure and CSR sustainability reporting score. Their study that for businesses to engage with stakeholders and uphold their commitment to transparency, corporate reporting is a critical tool. Next, on the board gender diversity, firms with gender diverse boards had lower yields, higher ratings, greater issue size, and shorter maturity, according to the authors. And next point on the independent board members, finding revealed that businesses with a large number of independent directors on their boards of directors have higher company performance and value. And research from Alipur revealed that board independence strongly enhances the favorable effect on EDQ on performance, and businesses with more independent board members are more likely to participate in environmental disclosure for increased performance. On the cultural diversity, is an unobservable type of social diversity that is significantly connected to the acceptance of CSR activities. And last one is independent board member. The study discovered a positive association between board independence and CSR sustainability reporting score, indicating that board independence significantly improves CSR sustainability reporting score. Okay, this is the let's go to this one. Okay, this is the research framework for the independent variables, board characteristic. There are three IV: board gender, cultural diversity, independent board members. For the dependent variables, CSR activity, which is CSR sustainability reporting score. And also in this study, I used the control variable, the age of the company, also factor that determines CSR sustainability reporting score. But that is not the main focus of this study. In this case, there are few factors that affected, and age of the company has been chosen as a control variable in this study. For the hypothesis development, there is a significant relationship between the board gender, diversity, and CSR sustainability reporting score. There is a significant relationship between the cultural diversity and CSR sustainability reporting score, and there is a significant relationship between the independence board member and CSR sustainability reporting score. Okay, the summary of findings. I have three tables for three countries. For Malaysia public listed company, for the board gender diversity, there is a significant positive relationship between board gender diversity and CSR sustainability reporting score. There is the finding is sufficient evidence to reject HNUL. And the second point on cultural diversity, there is a significant relationship between the cultural diversity and CSR sustainability reporting score. The finding also is sufficient evidence to reject HNUL. For the independent board members, there is significant positive relationship between independent board members and CSR sustainability reporting score. The finding also sufficient evidence to reject HNUL. This is for Indonesia public listed company. For the two variables, board gender diversity and cultural diversity, there is sufficient evidence to accept HNUL. And the last one, independent board members, there is sufficient evidence to reject HNUL. And the summary of finding for Singapore public listed company. For the first one, board gender diversity, there is sufficient evidence to reject. For the cultural diversity, there is sufficient evidence to accept. And the last one, independent board members, there is sufficient evidence to reject. And the next table is summary of hypothesis for Malaysia public listed company. For H1, the result is supported. For H2, the result is supported, and H3 as well is supported. And for Indonesia public listed company, the first two, H1 and H2, the result are not supported, and the last one, H3, is supported. And the last one is summary of hypothesis for Singapore public listed company. The first one, the H1 hypothesis is supported, H2 is not supported, and H3 is supported. Okay, for the contribution, the finding of this study also may contribute to an improvement in the quality of sustainability reporting for public listed companies. This would enable corporate stakeholders to assess the fundamental workings on the reporting companies, resulting in transparency and corporate accountability. The public listed company's commitment to implementing the sustainable development goals and moving towards sustainable development is strengthened by improved corporate sustainability reporting. The limitation that I found in this study, because this study analysis is purely based on data gathered from the Refinitiv Econ database of publicly listed companies in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. There is a mismatch and an imbalance in data completeness. For example, of 38 companies available on the database connected to CSR sustainability reporting scores, only 11 were able to be studied using a 10-year data period database with complete and comprehensive data on CSR. So as a result, a small sample size is insufficient to offer a comprehensive picture of the relationship between all factors and CSR sustainability reporting score. So if this study can collect more data, it will surely be able to give a complete picture by demonstrating the irrefutable association between all factors. So the recommendation is the importance of CSR sustainability reportings and openness is growing according to a number of market trends and increased governmental and legal scrutiny. In addition to NGOs and consumers, regulators and investors are calling for the management of associated risks and opportunities, as well as the transmission of a full sustainability evaluation. A comprehensive evaluation and articulation of the business sustainability performance is required by an expanding number of financial instruments and business partners. In addition to highlighting a firm's positive effect on the environment, society, and economy, sustainability reporting also disclose any negative effects. So as a conclusion for the future, research should cover the need for the three countries as follows. For Malaysia, first one, Malaysia public listed company should be more engaged in CSR disclosure, regardless the impact, whether it's big impact or small impact to the community and society. It is suggested that Malaysia public listed company should be more aggressive in this field. They also should be more active to show their concerns towards community and environment, because since the finding that we got from this study, the adjusted square recorded that 39% of the factors are considered in this study. So 61% are still not explored, which that can be explored in the future research. And as for Indonesia, as we can see, there's only 0.76 of factors are explored and 99.24% are not explored. So there's a big potential for the future research to explore for Indonesia public listed companies. And the last one is for Singapore public listed companies. As we can see here, 54.54% of factors are considered in this study. Thus, the remaining 45.46 are not explored, and also this might be investigated in the future research. Okay, with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Miss Anis Suzita. Okay, I open it to the panel members.
Thank you so much, Cik Anis, right? Okay, for the study that you have done. Okay, can I ask you what was actually the motivation for you to do the study across these three countries? What was the initial motivation, for you to do over, this Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore?
Actually, I chose this as we are in the Southeast Asia, so
Okay,
I would
alright.
like to see the trend with our neighboring countries.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, as we can see, Malaysia and in Malaysia and Singapore, we are like fair in terms of implementing CSR disclosure reporting score compared to our neighboring country, Indonesia.
I see. Okay. All right. Okay. So you were saying that there's quite a lot of limitation to your study, right? So at the end
Yes.
of the day, there was only 11 companies, but it's just that you did it over a longitudinal, there was like 10 years, right? Okay, well, that was good.
10 years of observations, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, that's good. Okay. Can you just sort of like turn back to your slides, and when you had your summary of the hypothesis?
This one, Prof?
And okay. Move forward.
Okay.
This is, hang on, where you, okay, this is summary of findings, right? Okay. Can you move forward? The one that you had the Malaysia, the Indonesia, and the Singapore. Okay, this is a summary of the hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So for Singapore, two of the hypotheses as supported, and for cultural diversity, it's not supported, right? Okay. All right. Okay. I just want, because was, I didn't look at that just now. So the fact that you took legitimacy theory, right, as your underpinning theory, would there be other theories, that can be considered, if we are looking at, other future students wanting to pursue and, sort of like take up on your study?
Yeah, maybe I would suggest stakeholders theory, Prof.
Okay, all right, okay. Reason being?
Reason being because I can relate much a CSR contribution to the society, to
Exactly.
stakeholders. Yeah,
that's right. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So that's all I have to say. Chinese, I think you did a very good job, in doing this, and the fact that it was interesting, that you did your study over three countries. Okay, so thank you so much.
thank you so much, Prof.
Chinese. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. I totally agree with you. Doing research over 3 countries is a big task ahead. Anis, congratulations on this research done. Although you had some limitations in terms of the data, I found the data very interesting. Singapore being, well, they say they are advanced country, they are very advanced in terms of their governance and corporate structure, even in terms of the CSR, still cannot chew gum in Singapore, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that you found that in Singapore, if you go to your last page itself, there is that Singapore data of only 54% of the factors that you have considered. So I would say that quite a number of Singapore companies still do not provide sufficient disclosures in terms of their CSR. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in terms of Malaysian company, I agree sometimes there are limitations, but I'm kind of surprised that you only had 39% of the factors, because CSR disclosure have been made mandatory for the public listed company for more than 10 years. Perhaps the research company did not pick up the information correctly. Sometimes you may have to actually read the annual reports yourself. Yeah. I like this research because you were focusing on the investor communication, particularly in these 3 countries, because you're looking at the approaches of how these companies in the three countries actually present their CSR report in being in the respective economic ambience itself. Now, you did mention that this stretched over 10 years. So, in this region, we did have very similar financial distress situation on the financial sector, plus COVID, that sort of thing. And I like the fact that you were able to pinpoint in relation to the three factors: gender, cultural diversity, and the independence of the board for these three areas. Now, one of the things maybe for future research, even though we are in three different countries, I think the way we do business is quite similar, particularly for family-owned companies, even though they are public listed. So, you may want to look at family involvement in management matters, because that would also translate down to how they deal with their CSR reporting itself. The other thing is, I totally agree with you when you mentioned that you would want to expand on the stakeholders theory, because at the end of the day, the value of the company boils down to how the stakeholders see it. Very comprehensive, again, another very comprehensive study. I like your approach, and to me, I feel that what you have set as your limitation, but being able to come out with this conclusion is a very great effort. Well done. Thank you
so much, Ms.
Back to
Leong.
Prof.
Okay, thank you all the panel members. As usual, the audience, if you like to ask question, feel free to do so by writing your question in the chat box to any of the presenter. Last but not least, our fourth presenter, not because he requested to be the last presenter, but the other three presenters actually requested the earlier slot, and he left with the last one. So Mr. Khaidir Bakri, he wanted me to say his age is 44, but always young at heart. Okay, and currently staying at Bandar Baru Salak Tinggi. He has a diploma in public administration from UiTM in 2000, Bachelor of Corporate Administration, UiTM 2002, and MBA in Corporate Governance in PBS 2022. He started his career in civil service in 2004 in charge of training unit as administrative officer at Health Department of Selangor until end of 2007. And in 2008, he started his career as administrative and diplomatic officer and later obtained diploma in public administration from Intan and continued to serve in development division at Ministry of Malaysia from 2008 until 2017. And he later transferred to Ministry of Youth and Sport in 2017 and continued to serve in development division until year 2020 before furthering his study at PBS. His current position is a Principal Assistant Secretary at the Malaysian Administrative Modernization and Management Planning Unit, MAMPU, an agency under the Prime Minister Department, specializing in policy implementation, monitoring, and analysis. Mr. Khaidir, where is your, okay, cannot see your face there just now. All right, so the screen is yours. You may do your presentation now.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you all listen to me?
Can you speak up a little bit? Make the mic closer to you.
Can you listen now?
Okay.
Can you see the screen? No?
Yes.
Sorry. I don't know what happened. I'll try to. Can you see the screen? Can you all hear me?
Yes, yes, we can see the
Yeah.
screen and we can hear you. Maybe you can speak just slightly more louder.
Thank you very much. A very good morning, Madam Chairman, Madam CEO of PBS, Deputy President of MAICSA, Dato' Akbar Baduni, the panelists, academician, ladies and gentlemen, our beloved lecturer, Prof. Razman. My name is Hadi Bakri, and today I would like to present to you the study that I did on the title of the relationship of firm performance, board characteristic, and environment, social, and governance ESG. Okay. As an introduction, I would like to start my remark of there are many things to consider for Malaysian public companies. There are always a significant increase and a significant amount of pressures placed on our company for particular business in environment in Malaysia, which is to demonstrate the performance in application of ESG. In addition to that, as a prerequisite, I think the purpose of I'm doing this study is to investigate the possibility of the correction between ESG and number of criteria, including the company firm performance, board characteristic, and firm characteristics. It's a common knowledge, as we all know, in the current situation where the international investors is not just looking for the angle of profit of the company, but they also look into the sustainability of the company. It is very imperative for the business, and particularly a publicly traded business, to adhere to all the tenets of sound corporate governance, because that's the only way the company can assure that they are doing the best, and to focus on and to be identified that the company has really put their effort on fulfilling their duties to the public. I continue this presentation with the problem statement. We are assuming that the social, environmental, and governance practice are significant for all stakeholders. And this is very true, because for our public companies in Malaysian economic ambient, it really have a deep need to serve the investors' interest in its corporation. Therefore, the initiative for implementing an ESG to make sure the availability of sustainability reporting, and to ensure the companies have really done their job by disclose their sustainability efforts to the public is important. By examining some of the board qualities, for example, how the board of directors play their roles as a critical to the corporate governance tools to maintain the quality of company ESG reporting. And in this study also, we are also focusing on our study on the numbers of board meetings and how it affect the ESG. For the scope of studies, we have 25 Malaysian public companies that have been chosen, not by sampling, because that's the only company, 25 company that have a very comprehensive data over the period of 10 years, beginning of 2011 until 2020. And that also will become our limitation to get the full data. And since that, we try to get all the data from external, such as the annual reports, to match the data in the definitive econ database. The objective of the study is three: to examine whether the firm performance, which is represented by the ROA, has significant relation on ESG activities. The second one is to determine whether the board characteristic, which is represented by the number of board meetings and board size, has a significant relationship towards ESG activities. And the third one is to examine whether the firm characteristics, the firm size, has a significant relationship towards ESG activities. In this study, we use two theories. The first theory is stakeholder theories, where it must represent the characteristics. For example, it represents the board characteristic, number of board meeting and board size, and firm characteristic, which is represented by firm size. To meet the concept of stakeholder theories, I think that it's very crucial that we know the align of the stakeholders' interests in strategy to develop values to the business. And this study will explore whether the independent variable are positively associated with the dependent variable ESG score. The second theory is agency theory. It's much more represented on firm performance, which is represented by your ROA against ESG score. As we all know, that the agency theory is how the agency collaborate with other agencies and to operate together to achieve its objective. Okay. This is the literature review that shows the results of the past research is not consistent. There are some significant relation and there are some non-significant relation that shows in the past research. For example, if we study by ROA versus ESG, there are many significant relationship and there are also non-significant relationship. Board meeting also have a significant and non-significant relationship. Board size also have the significant and non-significant relationship, and firm size also have significant relationship and non-significant relationship. From that, we come up with this framework where we have three variables, which is independent variables, is represented by firm performance, ROA. Independent variable also represented by board characteristic, which is number of board meeting and board size, and control variable by firm characteristic and the firm size. And against dependent variable ESG activities, which is ESG score, environmental score, social score, and governance score. I would like to continue this presentation into the hypothesis question. From our objective, we come up with 4 hypothesis question, which is the relationship between return of asset ROA towards ESG activities. Question number 2 is relationship between the number of board meeting toward ESG activities. Number 3 is relationship between board size and toward ESG activities. And number 4, relationship between firm size toward ESG activities. This is a summary of findings. After we do the correlation and to determine whether there's significant difference or not, the finding is for return of asset. All 4 questions has no significant relationship. Return of asset against ESG, return of asset against environmental, return of against social, return of asset against governance. All of them has no significant relationship. We go to number 2, which is board of meetings. From 4 questions, 3 questions has significant relationship. Only 1 question do not meet the significant relationship, which is number of board meeting and environmental pillar score. The next one is board size. From 4 questions, only 1 question that shows significant relationship, which is between board size and social pillar score. All the 3 questions, the other 3 questions has not shown any significant relationship. For firm size, all the 4 questions has not shown any significant relationship. From that, we can summarize the hypothesis as such. Return of asset is not supported since all the questions do not show any significant relationship. Number of board meeting is supported since 3 of the questions shows significant relationship. Board size is considered supported even though only 1 question is show significant relationship, because there's 4 ways of determining the relationship. If we find 1 question that show relationship, you consider it supported. And firm size, unfortunately, it's not supported because 4 of the questions is not showing any significant relationship. For the way forward of this study, I also put my thought on this study as a realigning the ESG perspective. As we all know that it was discovered that many business nowadays has taken an unbalanced approach. They are more focusing on profitability factors and too little on providing information on the implementation of ESG. Even though many companies have taking more steps to declare what they have done in ESGs, but unfortunately, there are many other public company that not doing so. So meaning that for such study, we're not seeing that business community is really adhered to see ESG as a very important thing. So meaning that this will be the result of the company placing excessive emphasis on the significant profitability, which only the factor that can company continue existence. In this belief, I think without adopting the ESG and treating the ESG as a tools for profit is not going to make the company survive for a very long time. It will only lead the company to transform into business that means for amazing wealth, for to be a tool of or a mechanism of selling product but do not address to solve any people's problem. Next slide will be focused on human governance. I try to put human governance in the perspective of ESG because we know that it is human who run the company. Even though the company can assume the identity, but it is still the human who run the company. And for that matters, it is emphasized to having great deal of importance that human have the ability to control the business in order to ensuring the implementation of ESG as comprehensive. Meaning that if human put their thought towards just to gain profit from the business, which actually is not the right way for human to deal, because the initial state of the business is to solve people's problem. But if we do not focus on human governance, where people take care of other people's, or people take care of other people's problem through a business, then this will lead to catastrophic. Unfortunately to say that this study have a huge limitation. From 46 Malaysian public companies into the database, in the Econ Definitive database, only 25 Malaysian public companies that have comprehensive 10 years data period that I can use for this study. Maybe if at that time we have more Malaysian public firms, more numbers that we can really use the database, the result can be slightly different. For future research of ESG, for me, it's very important as a student of governance to find ways of to make sure that the business community to really have a better understanding about ESG. Many research has been done, but it seems like the business community is not buying. They treat ESG as a tools, whether tools for makes profit, not to say tools for evade taxation, because ESG should be treated as a pillar of the business, not to put ESG at a ransom and only do ESG after they have access to a certain level of profitability. And for that matters, I also believe that researchers should not abandoned business community. The business community should be reminded all the time to convince them that the ESG is something that is embedded into the business, is required. It's not a choice for them to choose whether to do it or not to do it. So as a conclusion, the way ESG has been treated in the business community is different from business to business. There are some business community, we know they are very serious. Some countries, they take ESG very seriously, and some countries they not take ESG seriously. For example, one of the research that I've read in Italy, in Italian business setting, the companies do not take ESG very seriously. They just focus on profit, and therefore, as to end this presentation, I would like to remind all the governance students to really put their effort to find and to go to further the studies, because ESG is dynamic. ESG is dynamic, and ESG is one of the things that we can treat, that business community treat in many ways. Like I said before, they can be treated as profitability tools. They can be treated as pillars of the business. They also can be treated as strategic tools, and there are many things that the many business community can treat ESG. But the true thing is, we want business community to treat ESG as the pillar of the business. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khairil. Okay, I'd like to open it to the panel members.
Okay, can I start first? Thank you, Cik Haidir, for the research that you have done. Very comprehensive, on the study that you have done. And what I can see is that your findings were quite mixed, right? Whereby you had board meetings and board size that was supported, whereby the ROA and the firm size, it was not supported. So am I right, Cik Haidir?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, and of course, as mentioned also earlier by the other presenters, that one of the obvious limitations that you have is that the database, right? You could only get about 25 PLCs, right?
Yeah.
Out of the 43. Yeah. So I would think that would be a thing that probably other researchers, future researchers will also face, right? So in that note, how do you want to ensure, the fact that you can get more data, and not just having to make do with that number only, how so that the findings that you get, are more robust. How do you do that actually? Sometimes because as I can see, just for the sake of argument, just for the sake of discussion, because that has always been a limitation in all research done, whereby that you can't get that much data, and the data is not complete, So how do we want to ensure that, in future research that might not be, what we say is a significant challenge, for researchers to get more data, more complete data. What do you think, Cik Haidir? Just to get just to pick your brain on that, actually.
Thank you.
It gets very frustrating, right? When you do research, and that has always been a limitation from from years ago until now.
Thank you, Prof. I believe that the availability of data especially on the database, existing database as Econ. Maybe it's the research company do not collect the data very well, because as we all know that Malaysian Code of Government, MCCG, has really enforced company to disclose about their reporting very much, about more than 8 to 9 years now. So
That's
meaning
right.
that all public company must follow their regulation. But the other ways of getting the data is to really look into the annual report one by one. But that will take so much time and effort.
True, true.
The for us, we're doing MBA, which is the shortest time
Of course, yeah.
to finish the study. Then we use data from the existing database. But if we really want to get a very comprehensive result, and
That's right.
we must go through each and every years of annual report for that matters. And that's the only matters that we can ensure that data that can be collected. The other thing is, I don't believe that public companies, especially in Malaysia, really have a standard reporting in their annual report, because each and every company report as they are pleased. Some has reported very lengthy, and some have reported very short. So the way we interpret the data, if we go one by one, also is very, we have to really look deep into it, whether the data is valid or not. So it's much more easier to search data from the existing database. But if Prof said that to really have a very comprehensive result and everything, I think that's the only way is we go for manual and see for every annual report. Prof.
Okay. All right. Okay. And you had in your slide on the way forward, yeah, you did comment, you did mention saying that, many businesses had taken an unbalanced approach, right?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, they focus more on profitability, as compared to, wanting to improve the ESG. Whereas, as you have mentioned, that the ESG pillar is of the utmost significant, utmost important, right?
Yeah.
For companies to survive. But do you think it's because of the current situation of the world, with when we talk about the pandemic, you talk about wars, you talk about things like climate changes, every single day and all that, all these challenges. Is that the reason why all this like for instance ESG and all that is taking a backseat, as compared to like you want to survive, you need to make profits? What do you think?
It's true what you
Would
said,
that
Prof.
be it? Yeah.
It's true. It is true what you said, because company tend to make profit first, then to implement ESG.
Exactly.
Because they need to survive. They need
That's
to
right.
survive. The only mean of surviving in the business is to make profit.
True. Correct.
But yet, as a student, for me as a student of governance, we are thinking, the way we're thinking is ESG should be the pillar of the business.
Exactly.
Like we erected a house, that the pillar of the house must be erected from ESG, because should be embedded in every business.
Right. Yeah.
But business is tend to deviate from the earliest initial and becoming becoming a body that a mess of profitability and do not care about ESG anymore because they want to
Exactly.
survive.
That's right. So it's difficult to balance between, you know, your short-term goals and your long-term, you know, objective, right? True.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. Call it Haidir. I'm asking you the question. Okay, thank you. Good job, Haidir. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. I totally agree with you on your comments to the study done and the research results. Tuan Kadir, congratulations on this. I see the very detailed effort because you do not take ESG just as a focus area, but you look at the different pillars itself in your study. That was one of the very interesting part of your research paper itself. And I like the fact that you have come to the conclusion that most businesses treat ESG as a tool rather than having the pillars of ESG as part of the business itself. I think that's very true because if you look at businessmen, their focus is really make profit. You know, as a company secretary sitting in boardrooms for so many years, what I do not hear from the board members, be it independent or executive board members, is how they should use the ESG as the connect to profitability. Because to me, I see when you look at it as a different pillar, not as just one item itself, the businessman will be able to identify and plan both for societal as well as environmental risks, particularly those who does consumer products itself, you know, with so many issues going on consumer products, you know, those are the environmental risks that they should be thinking of. But I believe most of our businessmen don't associate environmental risks as part of ESG. They still keep very focused on corporate social responsibility, you know, because that is something that can be seen by the whole wide world. And I like the fact that you have pinpointed that they should look at the different pillars of ESG as part of their business and have it embedded there. Very good. The other part I like is you highlighted human governance. And that's different from the other research papers' conclusion. Very true, human governance. And being human, if you're asked, given a lump sum of money to do business, of course, looking at stakeholders theory again, you want to make profit for your stakeholders, all right? And the fact that if you look at human governance, the goal, make profit. But to reach the goal, I think it's a vicious cycle. In order for them to reach the goal, they have to do a lot of things, okay? And part of which is looking at risk. And risk actually deals with ESG. Governance, very important. Governance risk, environmental risk, societal risk itself. So I felt that you, in this research, even though you say you have very limited data, you were able to actually squeeze out from your research results what is the problem behind all of this. So I salute you for this result paper. And I definitely look forward to more papers from you and also from the others. Thank you very much. Back to you, Tuan Rasman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Norwegian and also Ms. Leong Oiwa. I really enjoy all the comment and the insight and the appreciation of what students have presented. Oh, finally, we have come to the end of the event. I'm targeting 11:50, not 11:49. So thank you for all for keeping to the time limit. And thank you for all the participants who has been faithful from the beginning until the end. Hopefully, this colloquium has proven to be beneficial for those attending, especially the PBS MBA students who are thinking of doing study or research on corporate governance issues. And also to the MAICSA members, hopefully you also will be able to benefit from the research conducted by our student in PBS. We will upload this session on our PBS website once it is ready, just like the previous 4. So now, if you visit our PBS website, you can see the first 4 colloquiums. Each colloquium has 4 presentations. So with the 5th one, we already have 20 papers presented. And soon we will publish it in the e-book version and will be made available to everyone for free. And I think we will also seek collaboration from MAICSA to have it uploaded on MAICSA website as well for the benefit of the MAICSA members. So all these 20 research findings will be made available soon once we apply for the ISBN number. And on behalf of PBS, I would like to express our sincerest thanks and appreciation to all involved with this event, starting with MAICSA, especially Dr. Akbar, Deputy President, and the 2 MAICSA panelists, Associate Professor Norwegian and Ms. Leong Oiwa. Not to forget our PBS CEO and President, Professor Dr. Azmawani. Finally, to all 4 presenters and the amazing audience who attended the session today. You guys have been amazing. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in the next edition of PBS MAICSA Colloquium. Assalamualaikum, Selamat Hari Raya Haji, and thank you to all, and have a very good weekend, all of you. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.